Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to be discussing nutrition and dietary fat. And the tagline we're going to be talking about today is eating fat does not make you fat. We're going to kind of follow the same kind of baseline that we did on carbohydrates. I'm going to hope to keep this much shorter. But I'm going to give you some of the functions on what fats are actually used for, and then give you my own personal feedback on what I found with dietary fat and nutrition for people involved in fitness. And I'm going to be reading from some notes that I kind of made on fat and what it actually is. But one of the things that we want to first touch on is that 95% of all fat compounds are what they call triglycerides, or fats and oils. So all 95% of those compounds are triglycerides. And 99% of stored fat in the body, or used fat in the body, is triglycerides. And triglycerides are basically made up of what we know as saturated and unsaturated fats. With the unsaturated, and basically your saturated fats are going to come mostly from your animal products and fat and meats and so forth, and other things, of course. We're just kind of talking very generally. And in unsaturated fats, you basically have two different types. You have your monounsaturated fats, which makes up from a double bond, and you have polyunsaturated fats, which come from a singular bond. Monounsaturated fats, most of your, there are a lot of it. There's a lot of different ones, but most common forms are like olive and canola oil. When you're looking at polyunsaturated fats, they are essential fatty acids, not produced by your body, but they are extremely essential for both health and function. And they are just what the name says they are. They are essential. And basically, what you get those from is like fish, salmon. Most people know like omega-3, omega-6, omega-9 fatty acids, and a lot of fish oil supplements and different flaxseed oil supplements that are available. And one of the things that we want to look at is in conjunction with like cholesterol and some of the things that cholesterol is attributed to as far as heart health is concerned. And typically, and this is very general, and we're not really getting into specifics here, but saturated fats generally will increase your LDL, or your bad cholesterol, and unsaturated fats typically will have most of the function in increasing your HDL, which is good, which are your good cholesterol. And also recently, in the last few years, there's been a lot of focus on trans fats. And basically a trans fat is adding hydrogen to an unsaturated fat that will end up hardening around room temperature. And companies will do that to increase the shelf life. So if you start thinking about that, and that's obviously not a good combination to start hardening a fat at room temperature that's going to actually increase the shelf life. And you can just imagine what that does in your body. That not only does that increase your LDL, but that decreases your HDL, and it's like the absolute opposite in the directions that you want to go. But the actual functions of fat, what that actually does for you, or why you need to take it in, is it helps provide energy. It is we're going to talk a little bit about carbohydrates and fat and some of the myths, but it does help to supply energy to your body. It helps cellularly with function and structure, and also the different cellular signals that are given off in your body. It definitely helps with that. It acts as a good precursor to hormones. It helps to regulate nutrients in your cells. It supports and protects your organs. It insulates your body and basically preserves heat in your body. I know a lot of times when I get ultra lean contest-wise, I'm always cold. I have friends who compete, clients who we help that are always cold. And typically, it comes from a reduction of body fat and insulation being gone in their body. And for dietary purposes, probably one of the most important things is it helps help hunger. The more fat you have in your diet, or having an adequate amount of fat in your diet, it will decrease the hunger rate, because it's increasing or decreasing the rate of digestion, basically causing foods to digest more slowly. And whenever foods get digested more slowly and your body doesn't process it as quickly, it typically will lead to hunger being less and less. So one of the things, though, that we want to look at is, this is where we're going to get into my personal thoughts on it, and talking a lot about high carb diets, low carb diets, things like that. And one of the things that we want to touch on is the thermic effect of fat, and the fact that it takes less energy or less effort to convert fat over to fat than it does carbohydrates to fat. So it takes more energy. It actually takes your body more calories burned, or for your body to produce more calories outputted to actually convert carbohydrates to fat than it does fat to fat. It doesn't take much effort for your body to convert fat to fat. It just takes time because of the slow digestion. And so I guess what the term that people would use is the metabolic rate. When you ingest food, your body has a certain metabolic rate. Body temperature will increase, and therefore your body will start burning off food. And that metabolic rate is quite a bit different, or quite a bit less, when you've ingested fat than it will be with carbohydrates. Another important thing to kind of discuss or kind of talk about is the density of calories in fat. When you're dealing with protein or carbohydrates per gram, when it says like 1 gram of protein, 1 gram of carbs, there's 4 calories per gram. And in fat, there's 9 calories per gram. And the best way for me to think about that, or to show you, is take a tablespoon of sugar and take a tablespoon of take a tablespoon of fat. I'm probably going to be wrong here, but I think a tablespoon of sugar is right in the range of like 30 to 40 calories. And a tablespoon of fat is about 100 to 150 calories, and some depending on which fat you use. But most oils are about 120 calories per tablespoon. So the density of calories in fat over proteins and carbohydrates are quite a bit more, and it's very, very easy to get your calorie levels up very quickly by increasing your dietary fat. For people that are gaining weight, they have to take in necessary amounts of carbohydrates, but the best way for someone to gain weight is to take in high levels of carbohydrates and fat, because you can really get their calorie levels up quickly with a lot of dietary fat. So that gets into a lot of these fad diets, dieting that talks about reducing fat, reducing carbohydrates. I can get you lean by doing this or doing this. So that's the question: do carbs make you fat, or does fat make you fat? And the answer is neither. I mean, it's your diet as a whole. It's your calories as a whole. It's the amount of calories that your body takes in versus outputting that's going to determine how much fat your body is storing. And the biggest thing to look at is, there's all of these things that are out there about like insulin resistance, and I can't take in a lot of carbohydrates because I'm insulin resistant, or my body just does this or this. We need to identify why people may, and insulin resistance is a problem, but let's identify what causes insulin resistance. I've experimented with myself. I've experimented on low carb diets, I've experimented on high carb diets, and I've looked at, can I lose fat more quickly one way or the other? And for the most part, the one common thing, there's 2 common trends that I've found. It does have to do with how many calories I'm outputting versus how many calories I'm inputting. If I'm in a 500 calorie deficit per day, I'm going to lose about a pound of fat no matter what I do. If I'm in a 1,000 calorie deficit per day, I'm going to lose about 2 pounds of fat no matter what I do. But the whole key, though, for everybody is, especially if you're trying to retain muscle. Us in fitness want to be lean and toned, so we want to retain muscle. So a big key in doing that is maintaining a good amount of protein in your diet. Maintaining a good amount of protein, as we discussed a couple days further, or previously, to keep a good amino acid profile to hold on and to be able to recover from exercise. But above and beyond that, if I'm in a calorie deficit and I'm taking in enough protein, typically I'll lose fat either way, whether I'm on a low carb diet or a high carb diet. And typically what I've found is that I don't like being on low carbs, because if I go too low in carbs for too long a time, I start to feel miserable. So I guess my point in all this is, what causes insulin resistance is being overweight. Because if you think about that, if you think about increasing your overall calories and taking in too many carbohydrates, and your body starts producing, your blood sugar levels get too high, your body starts producing insulin, and sooner or later you're going to get you're going to be overweight because your body's going to start storing a lot more fat, and that's going to lead to insulin resistance. It isn't taking in carbohydrates that leads to insulin resistance. I have found that people have been able to monitor, have been able to regulate their blood sugar levels and take in high carbs at the same time. As we were talking about yesterday, the key in all of this, when we're talking about dietary fats, carbohydrates, is to have a balance. I don't think you should go low in fat. I don't think you should go high in fat. I don't think you should go low in carbohydrates. I don't think you should go high in carbohydrates. I think it should be what your body needs. As we talked about yesterday, if you're a high endurance athlete, or someone that engages in high intensity training, you need more carbohydrates. And if you're more sedentary, you can be lower in your carbohydrates. But either way, you need enough dietary fat in your body based on the parameters that we talked about before. Now, they're based on fat causing slower digestion. It will help regulate blood sugar levels a little bit more. The more balanced your diet is, the more fiber you have in your diet, the more complex your carbohydrates, and the more fat and protein you have in your diet, the more regulated your insulin levels will get. And not only will that cause for less blood sugar increase, but it will cause for less hunger to happen as well. So having balance in your diet and balance of all your macronutrients is incredibly important, the most important thing. And if we're going to get into talking about fat loss and reducing fat for whether it's competition or fitness, we have to be in a calorie balance. So if we're wanting to maintain muscle, we have to maintain our protein levels. But then what we have to do is decrease calories. And the decrease in calories is going to come from either a reduction in fat or a reduction in carbohydrates. And either or can happen, but we need to keep an ample amount. Now, we do at Forster Fitness do some extreme dieting, and we do play around with that, but the basis for all of our fitness plans is to have balance, because if you put in too much carbohydrates in your system and you're not having enough fiber, proteins, and fat, your appetite is going to be extremely high because your body is producing all of this blood sugar. It's releasing all of this blood sugar, which is going to release to an increased release of insulin, which is going to lead to a higher output of hunger. So the thing that I want you to take away is fat doesn't make you fat, or taking in fat doesn't make you fat. Taking in carbs doesn't make you fat. It is your plan as a whole. It's having balance to your diet that really is the important factor. And that's the main thing I want you to take away, because when we start dieting a lot of, or reducing calories in a lot of our clients, we try to maintain essential amounts of fat, essential amount of carbohydrates, and not restricting things too much, but looking more at calorie balances and looking at specific goals that person has. I hope this kind of gives you a outline on our ideas or thoughts on fats, and just the biggest thing to remember is fat doesn't make you fat. I hope that you have a good day, and look forward to talking to you tomorrow.
When you feel that something's wrong, I'll shelter you and keep you warm. I'll never let you walk alone.